Hello and welcome everyone. This is the Dark Outsider here, and I want to thank you for coming to this video. I think you're here for one of two reasons. Either A, you read the title and you want to hear a little bit about what happened with my encounter, or two, you just got a notification and you follow me already, so you're just here listening. So first things first, if you're not already a subscriber, I'd love for you to subscribe to me now. This is typically what we do here on this channel. Actually, you know what? Let me be a little bit maybe more honest. This is something a bit different than what I typically do on this channel. Typically, I read horror stories and so forth. This is something a little bit different. My channel is still small enough to kind of experiment with these types of videos where it's not 100% scripted and so forth. And I've been getting feedback that, for the most part, some of these videos people really like. So, that's why I'm doing this, and kind of telling you about a personal thing that happened to me. So this will be a little bit more off the cuff. I'm not reading from a script per se, and hope you stick around, and I hope you enjoy it. So first things first, I don't know if I'm ever going to show my face on screen. Maybe one day. Haven't really decided that yet. But my friends, personal friends, know I have this channel. They know the real person behind who is the Dark Outsider. They know, for the most part, that I'm a pretty normal dude. But I do get asked by my friends and many others why I enjoy horror so much. Why do I think about it, talk about it, write about it, and in this case, read about it, and narrate it on YouTube. So if you've ever studied like writing or listened to interviews with authors and things like that, they get asked a lot, like, where do you come up with your ideas? You have all these crazy horror ideas or fantasy ideas, and that's really not what this video is for. Like you saw, this is kind of about a real experience. So while I have written things, a lot of it is kind of hidden in old drawers and, probably collecting moldy digital dust somewhere on one of my old MacBooks. But this video is really inspired by a question that I got from a friend quite recently, and I wish I had recorded it then. Because it would have been perfect for the channel. But I'm going to do my best to kind of reiterate what I said. So the question that they asked was phrased a little bit more ambiguous than this, so I'll paraphrase it. But have you ever seen a ghost? And if you did, how did you react? And do you think it affected you in any way? And I guess the reason why this question, as common as it is, was so, can't quite think of the word. I guess you can say intrusive, why it resonated, was because nobody has really ever asked it in that way. Most of the time, you get the comment, do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe in God? Which, yes, I do believe in both, actually. But asking me how I reacted, but more importantly, did it shape my thoughts one way or another? That question, for whatever reason, is kind of what burned that hole in my brain for a little bit. If I'm being 100% honest, I can't tell you one way or another if I ever have seen a ghost. But I can tell you that I've seen things. I've seen things that I actually still think about when I'm sitting outside my house at night. Sometimes I'll sit outside and I'll have a glass of scotch with my fire pit, and when I hear the sound of the wind in the trees, or I see a shadow kind of appear in my peripheral vision, I kind of start thinking a little bit, and I might have never caught view of an actual ghost or an apparition or whatever you want to call it, but the things that I did and have seen are, to me, just as creepy and, I think, thought-provoking. Because honestly, there are things that I'll never be able to forget. That I just never will get out of my head. So, I guess the best place to start, and sorry that it took this long to get here, but I promise I'll kind of keep going. The best place to start was when I was in my mid-teens. And that was back in the mid-90s. Yes, I'm that old. Anyway, we began messing around, dabbling might be a better word, with trying to talk to spirits, ghosts, and things like that. But that came about more by accident than actually being planned. There used to be an abandoned warehouse that we used to, for whatever reason, maybe because it was something to do or somewhere where we could stay hidden and just kind of hang out. I don't know, but we used to hang out there. And what I do know is that, what I remember is that we used to have to collect candles because it was really the only way that we'd be able to kind of see in there. And, you know, instead of having a bunch of flashlights, candles were just easier. So the group of us would try to gather as many candles as we could from wherever we could and stash them away at the warehouse. There was a hidden spot that we used to keep them. It was a hole, more or less, that was in a wall. And one of those afternoons, we all headed over there. It was late afternoon, starting to get dark, and we decided we should probably check our supply, how many candles we had left. And one of us, I don't exactly remember who, but they put their hands into the hole and began taking out the candles and handing them to us. And while he was standing, like teetered on the edge of the desk that he was standing on to reach into the hole, he said that he felt something else in there, something that wasn't one of the candles. And, you know, we kind of all looked at each other, you know, hoping that maybe it was like a box of money or something, but, you know, whatever. I mean, we were young. Anyway, after fumbling with it for a little bit, he finally removed it, and it was a planchette. It's like the piece that you use with like a Ouija board. And you know what? If there was an actual board in that hole too, we never found it. But the next day, or so, when we went back to the warehouse, we had created like a half-assed version of a Ouija board. So I guess you can say it never really crossed our simple-minded teenage brains that maybe there was a reason why this thing was hidden. But then again, it could have been there for any reason. So I guess I'll never really know for sure. But when we first started to like mess around with it, nobody really took it seriously. In fact, one of the other guys was like trying to make it spell curse words and that kind of shit. It was probably a week or so after that we began to take it a little bit more serious. And each time that we used the makeshift board, we seemed to get better with it. It's kind of like typing. The more you do it, like the faster you're able to type, the faster the words appear. So there were two spirits or names, whatever you want to call it, that we used to speak with the most back then. One of the names was Bethel. That was the first one. And Grims was the second. Grims was the more talkative of the two, if that's what you want to say. I should step back. One thing that we did learn when we first started using it was not to ask how or what happened to whoever it was you were communicating with. We made that mistake a couple times with some previous contacts, and they basically stopped, responding or whatever. So with Bethel and Grimm's, we never asked. What you can say, I guess we learned our lesson or whatever. We wanted to keep talking to both of them. Granted, they were separate. It wouldn't be at the same exact time, but we thought they were kind of cool because they did respond. So we noticed in the beginning that with either one of them that we were communicating with, they would use like common phrases and words, words like lost, sad, home. And I believed that they knew they were gone, that they were no longer a part of, my world, our world, this world, as we were. And soon after that, like I said, Grimm's was more like the spirit that we communicated with more. And Bethel would communicate, but not as often. And when she did, it was different. This is after, I don't know, several days of trying to go back and forth. So we had to kind of coax her more for answers. And in a way, it was like she was going quiet or she was refusing to answer. And the reason I say that is because, the biggest thing that happened was she began using words like scared, safe, hide, stop, and no more. That no more was quite literally one of the most freaky things that ever happened in my life. I admit, like, scared. I was scared. Thinking about it now, actually, it gets me a little bit on edge. I don't remember what we asked Bethel. I don't think it was anything bad or something that would have made Bethel want to stop communicating with us. But the very last time that she said no more, that exact moment, I don't think it could have been coincidence. We heard an enormous crash from one of the rooms off to the side of us. I remember. It sounded like an old attic door, like slammed, like the attic doors that are like in a hallway with old hinges that are like rusty and just weathered springs. So whatever it was, either something opened and shut itself or something that was already opened had been. We sat there in silence for the next couple minutes, I guess. If anybody in there made any sound at all, even if somebody's just shifted the way they were sitting, they, shut up, Me, I barely moved. I remember I wanted out. I wanted to get the fuck out of there. But at the same time, I didn't want to be the first and possibly the only one to leave because I knew I wouldn't have heard the end of it from all the other guys. So a short amount of time passed, maybe a minute or so. I guess as cliche as it sounds, it seemed like it took longer before I actually just kind of relaxed. Like my jaw was clenched, and you can actually see the tension kind of release from some of the other guys as well. And they started to kind of chill out, okay, and everything's all right. But nobody said a word still. We were kind of just silent. And I don't even think anybody knew what to say or who was going to talk first or whatever. But what still hadn't occurred to me at that time, that the candles that were previously lit, that were lighting up the room, were basically almost all out. There was only one candle that was still lit. And that candle was the one that was directly in front of of our little makeshift Ouija board. So we made our way back to the board, and we lit a couple more candles again, and we all put our hands back on the planchette, and quite instantly we noticed that Grimm's was now communicating, but it was different. It was definitely. I guess at first I thought my nerves had gotten the better of me. I was imagining that Grimm's was. I don't want to say angry, but it was more like he was agitated. And the words that were coming out now were like fragments. But words that he didn't normally use, or Grimm's. I don't know if it's a he or not. I'm assuming. But it was words like sorrow, leave, hate, be gone, and blood. And I remember the other guys were kind of getting a bit fed up with kind of this round of using the board. I'd look around, I'd see people were kind of, some of the guys were kind of just, their eyes were up. They weren't really looking at the board. They really didn't care. I think everybody kind of just wanted to be like, what, screw it. Let's just end it tonight. And right as I guess we were all pretty much about to quit, I started to smell smoke, something burning. And I asked if anybody else did, and nobody else did. But then slowly, one by one, they all started to kind of pop their heads up, and they started saying, like, I think I smell something too. And it wasn't the sweet smell of smoke, like a bonfire. This had like a plastic, like a chemical smell to it. So our hands were still on the actual planchette, and it began to move. And normally it will only move if you ask it a question. So we hadn't asked it a question. There was nothing to provoke the movement, but it started to move around, and no joke, it started to spell out BURN and FIR. And whether or not it actually got to the E in the word fire, we were just like, fuck this. We blew the candles out, we packed up all the shit that we had, and we just left out the window that we would normally crawl in and out of. And when we were leaving, I half expected to turn around and like see orange flames growing on the walls. When I got outside, I actually looked up at the roof, what I could see, to see if there were actually flames or at least smoke coming from the roof, and there was nothing. So after that, we never really headed back to the warehouse. It was also getting warmer, so we actually would spend more time outside, friends' patios and decks and things like that, and it just seemed like a better place than to hang out instead of a dark abandoned warehouse that honestly stunk like mold and rot anyways. So I don't know, several weeks, maybe a month or so passed before some of the other guys decided to go back to try to find a different place in the warehouse to hang out. I mean, it was pretty big. So, kind of changed the location of where we would hang out. And when they were looking around, they found some old filing cabinets in one of the offices. And I don't know if they were stoned or maybe buzzing on something, whatever, but they decided, like, screw it, let's bust some of these drawers open. They were only able to get one open enough to get like a hand and their arm in, I guess. So they were able to pull out some files, and they were some of the old personnel files. And this is where it starts to get a little bit weird, because I don't really know if they were telling the truth or not. To be honest with you, I'll never know. I don't really talk to most of them anymore, but I do believe most of what they said. So apparently the warehouse was some kind of a machine shop, or made some kind of machines, maybe motors or something like that. I don't really know. It was, quite a long time ago. But they had found accident reports. And these were reports that basically stated any injuries that took place at any time during day-to-day operations, maybe for insurance reasons or whatever. Now, I personally never saw any of them. I'm only going by what they told us, but they stated that some of the accidents were minor and some of them were not so minor. But one was a lot more than an accident, and was apparently listed as negligence leading to accidental death, something like that. Basically, a death happened due to negligence. Whose negligence? I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if it's the truth or not, but the person's name on that, they said, was a guy named Walter Grimsky, nicknamed Grims in quotes in the actual personnel file. Again, this is what they said, this is what they claimed. Freaked me out, but these guys typically didn't bullshit all that much. All their stories kind of corroborated. They all claimed that they were telling the truth, and I still think that at that time they believed that Grims, who we spoke with, was actually Walter Grimsky. It could have been just a wildly unbelievable coincidence. It could have been just a completely fabricated lie by those other guys to just mess around with us, or it was 100% the truth. All I know is that after they opened, or pried open that drawer and said that they found these files, we all began to see more odd things in the shadows, I guess you can say. Things that just didn't make sense. Movements that were there and then gone the next, a shadow, something that couldn't mimic anything else. Maybe when you're scared you might see something like a person's shadow, but if you look around you realize there's a clothesline nearby and a shirt hanging and blowing in the wind or whatever. These were things that didn't make sense. And one example of that was something that actually moved. And I wasn't the only one that saw it either. My ex-girlfriend at the time did too. We saw something actually covering the top of the hammock in my backyard at the time, my parents' backyard. So we both walked up to the hammock, which was located in the corner of my parents' old backyard. They had a pretty big backyard. It was hilly, so it was kind of up in the corner, higher than where we were on the patio. And the hammock was strung between two trees. It was like one of those white, hammocks. But we saw this shadow, clear as day. It was something dark, and it looked like a bunch of clothes or like a rolled up blanket. I even remember thinking to myself then, like, who the hell left a bunch of pool towels laying on the hammock? So as we got closer, the shadow moved. Just a little bit, but it moved. And it was enough to make both me and my ex-girlfriend like, whoa, what the fuck? So I told her, I said, just stay where you are. We were about maybe 20, 25 feet away. And as I got a little bit closer to the hammock, I was able to see through all the openings of the hammock. It was like that, the white like diamond pattern. And I looked back at her and I was like, there's nothing here. So I turned back around and I slowly put my hand, like hovered my hand over the top of the hammock, and I started slowly moving it down. And when my hand was about a foot or so above it, like I just felt the air around me, and like my hand, like the temperature just dropped like 10, 15 degrees like that. And the fucking hammock jolted upright. Like the same way that like a full-grown adult like fell off the opposite side of the fucking hammock. And I fucking freaked. Before I even had a chance to turn around, like my ex was already, she was screaming, she was running towards the patio. And that was the last time she was like, I'm not hanging out in your parents' backyard anymore, like once it gets dark. And, you know, it definitely freaked me out. And there were a lot of other things that happened as well. Like I said, I don't know what I saw. I don't know if it was a ghost or not. But there were things that my friends also began to see, and they started to talk about. They would see things when they were walking home or riding their bikes home from one of our houses, and sometimes we'd see things with one of the other guys around there as well. So I don't know if some of the other things we saw and witnessed made me get into horror, into paranormal activity and all that kind of stuff. But what I'll admit now is that I still check behind my back anytime I get home late at night and have to walk up my driveway in the dark to the front door. I'm always looking for something to move behind me in the dark, reminding me that maybe we woke something up all those years ago. Something or someone that was already gone, doesn't have sense of time anymore, another plane. And as I get older, they're stuck, wandering somewhere in the shadows. And they're ageless and still trying to communicate with me somehow. I haven't touched a Ouija board since that day. Not a real one, a makeshift piece of shit like we made, and I don't think I'll ever touch one again. So that's, you know, really the catalyst of what happened and how I kind of got into communicating or whatever it was about spirits. You know, like I said, it wasn't a plan. It kind of just happened. There were other things that did happen after that. You know, it was just one example with the with the hammock. It's one of the ones that stands out in my mind. But you know, I have more. And if you liked this and you do want to hear more, then let me know, because I'll share them. I mean, it kind of makes sense on a channel like this. Being that it is, you know, kind of horror and ghost stories and scary stories and creepy things and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'll definitely do some more. Let me know. Again, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Hit that thumbs up button. And I hope you like the story. Like I said, it's an old one, but I have several more. So hope you liked it. Stay dark, everyone, and see you next time. Take care.